Yellow Vest protests in France for the fourth consecutive weekend. Donald Trump says White House Chief of Staff John Kelly will leave his office by the end of the year.
Good evening and welcome. For the fourth weekend in a row, demonstrations have turned ugly across France as thousands vent their anger at the government. Police took nearly 1,000 people into custody and more than 100 people were injured during altercations. Peter Coveas tells us more.
In Paris, protesters wearing yellow safety vests gathered at the famed Champs-Élysées Avenue. Demonstrators marched and called for the resignation of President Emmanuel Macron. Fires were set on the streets while cars were turned over. Thousands of riot police confronted the protesters. Officers used tear gas and water cannons to subdue the violence. The Yellow Vest movement began when the government tried to raise fuel taxes, which caused a public backlash. Now the demonstrations are over the increased cost of living. This protester says they want a change in government, and the current regime is no longer credible. As for the violence, one demonstrator says it's only a few people that came to destroy things. Most demonstrators want a non-violent protest. The French capital is usually crowded with tourists, but some major attractions had to close because of the protests.
This is just for my daughter. She wanted to come here today to see Eiffel Tower. But we are a bit disappointed because it's closed. So we're hearing about this yellow, gilets jaunes, so what can we do? There is nothing we can do,
The violent outbursts did not just take place in the capital. Fires were set in Toulouse, and a barricade burned into the evening in Bordeaux. An estimated 125,000 people protested throughout France.
Par le dialogue.
Prime Minister Edouard Philippe said a dialogue must take place to unite the nation. President Emmanuel Macron is expected to make an address next week to possibly further soften planned reforms and tax increases. Peter Coveos, TVB News.
Well, the Yellow Vest movement has also spread from France into neighboring European countries. In Belgium, protesters took to the streets and called for the resignation of Prime Minister Charles Michel. Police had to use a water cannon to disperse the crowd, who threw rocks and firecrackers. Officers tried to keep the mob away from the European Union headquarters and the nearby Belgian government quarter. More than 400 rioters were detained. The protest also crossed into the Netherlands. Things in Amsterdam were much more subdued and on a smaller scale. Demonstrations there to show solidarity with the French movement.
Now to what critics are calling yet another staff shakeup at the White House. U.S. President Donald Trump announced his Chief of Staff, John Kelly, will be leaving by the end of this year.
John Kelly will be leaving, but I don't know if I can say retiring, but he's a great guy. John Kelly will be leaving at the end of the year. He's been with me almost 2 years now, as you know, between the two positions, and I appreciate his service very much.
Kelly spent 6 months as Secretary of Homeland Security before becoming Trump's second Chief of Staff to replace Reince Priebus.
Hi, John Francis Kelly.
Kelly's departure is the latest West Wing shakeup as senior White House officials admit they don't actually know if he resigned or he's being fired. Insiders insist Kelly is leaving because his relationship with Trump has been strained for months. They say while Kelly was often on the verge of resignation, Trump nearly fired him several times, accusations the president denied.
General Kelly is doing a fantastic job. There has been such false reporting about our relationship. We have a great relationship. He's doing a great job as Chief of Staff. I could not be more happy.
The retired four-star Marine Corps general was tapped by Trump in August 2017 to bring order to the White House. He did just that when he put an end to an open-door Oval Office policy that many critics compared to New York's Grand Central Station. The 68-year-old also instituted a more rigorous policy that prevented lower-level staff from going directly to Trump. Adhering to such regimented rules reportedly upset the president and alienated some longtime Trump allies. Kelly made no secret just how difficult his job is. He once joked it's harder than fighting on the battlefield. But he also made it clear, despite what the media reports, he is not at odds with the president.
Although I read it all the time, pretty consistently, I'm not quitting today. I don't believe, and I just talked to the president, I don't think I'm being fired today. I am not so frustrated in this job that I'm thinking of leaving.
Trump has vowed to reveal Kelly's replacement soon.
We'll be announcing who will be taking John's place. It might be on an interim basis. I'll be announcing that over the next day or two.
It is assumed that Trump will tap Vice President Mike Pence's chief of staff, Nick Ayers, to replace Kelly. Trump wants his next chief of staff to agree to hold the job through the 2020 election. Because Ayers had long planned to leave the administration at the end of the year, he might only fill the post temporarily. Trump also revealed he's chosen an Army chief of staff as his next top military advisor.
General Mark Milley, as you know, was just appointed the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to be determined date. A little bit later in the year, they usually give quite a bit of notice for a lot of reasons. Mark Milley, he's a great gentleman, he's a great patriot, he's a great soldier, and I look forward to that.
General Mark Milley is the current Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army. He's known for being charismatic, but also very tough. As the Army's top leader, he helped to place women in frontline infantry and other combat positions. His military career includes being in command of Special Forces units. As a battle-tested commander, he led deployments in the invasion of Panama back in 1989, along with missions in Bosnia-Herzegovina and the Iraq War. Huawei's chief financial officer remains in custody in Canada as her bail hearing resumes tomorrow. China state media slammed Canada over the shock arrest, calling it a violation of human rights. Christy Lung has that story.
Meng Wanzhou remains in custody in the Vancouver Correctional Centre as the bail hearing resumes tomorrow. She was arrested at Vancouver Airport 2 weeks ago at the request of the U.S. The 46-year-old was accused of using a Hong Kong shell company, Skycom, to sell equipment to Iran, violating U.S. sanctions. The U.S. also accuses Meng of making a false statement that Huawei had sold Skycom in 2009 as an attempt to cover up their connection. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Luo Yucheng urgently summoned John McCallum, the Canadian ambassador to China, to make a strong protest against the detention. And China's state media slammed Canada for violating human rights and the rule of law. The U.S. meanwhile also said Meng has 4 passports issued by mainland Chinese authorities and 3 Hong Kong SAR passports. Former Secretary for Security Lai Tong-kwok said Hong Kong laws do not forbid citizens from holding passports issued by other governments. Legislator Regina Ip, also a former security chief, believes Meng's arrest is related to the ongoing trade tension between China and the U.S. Huawei holds a leading position in providing 5G equipment around the world. Here in Hong Kong, about 30 members of pro-Beijing groups protested outside the U.S. Consulate General this morning, demanding the immediate release of Meng.
If our China's development will hindered by such matter, I think Hong Kong will be suffered too.
They called for public support for the telecoms giant. Christy Lung, TVB News.
A chairman of the Democratic Party says the group's lawmakers will continue to perform their duties in a peaceful and rational manner. That is despite the fact that 2 of the party's lawmakers face arrest by the police in connection with their protest actions in the Legislative Council chamber back in June. Caleb Lung has details.
Democratic Party lawmakers Andrew Wan and Lam Cheuk-ting are expected to be arrested when they meet officers at Wan Chai Police Station tomorrow. Their impending arrest stems from their behavior in the Legislative Council chamber on June 13th. They were protesting against a ruling by LegCo President Andrew Leung when the council passed the second reading of the co-location bill for the express rail link. Speaking to TVB News, Wu Chi-wai, chairman of the Democratic Party, says the expected arrest will not change its lawmakers' behavior in the LegCo chamber.
For Democratic Party, we follow rational and peaceful way to gain our support. We will not back down from any difficulties coming from the establishment camp or from the president or even from the government, because that is the value of our party.
Wu also said the Democratic Party supports both Andrew Wan and Lam Cheuk-ting regarding their actions in the LegCo chamber that day.
We don't see the way that they try to perform in the LegCo is not conform with our policy. The way that we try to voice out the wrongdoing of the president is one of the method or one of the performance that we would consider as peaceful, rational way to demonstrate that the decision coming from the president is irrational.
On the topic of Hong Kong independence, Wu believes the majority of the pro-democracy camp think independence is not a way out for Hong Kong. But the camp should come together and come up with a consensus on the issue. But Wu said the party would still have discussions on ending one-party rule, even if the subject became off-limits in the SAR. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
And brace yourselves for the winter, as the mercury is expected to take a further dip by midweek. The northeast monsoon is bringing cool weather to the coast of Guangdong, while a rain ban is affecting the territory. The observatory has forecast a drop in the temperature to as low as 12 degrees Celsius in the urban areas by Wednesday. The temperature is expected to rise during the latter part of the week. It will be even colder in Macau. That's where the temperature is expected to fall to 11 degrees by Tuesday and 10 degrees on Wednesday.
Still ahead on tonight's news. A survey shows most people are not aware of the correlation between alcohol and cancer. In Russia, a human rights pioneer dies at the age of 91. And pictures of a German tradition dating back to 1730.
keep 住我咁靚仔。只要輕輕按摩，就可以迅速滲透兒童嘅肌膚，有效淡化、平滑及預防疤痕。特有清新提子味，含植物成分，性質溫和，效果顯著。麥當娜德國寶兒除疤啫喱，細路仔嘅除疤好幫手。
Welcome back to TVB News. A new survey by the Hong Kong Anti-Cancer Society shows most respondents don't know heavy drinking leads to a greater risk of cancer. Kena Chu reports.
Some 1,000 people were surveyed by the Hong Kong Anti-Cancer Society in October and November. More than 900 of them were drinkers. 27% of respondents had consumed alcohol on a weekly basis in previous 3 months. Roughly a third of them had also engaged in binge drinking by consuming at least 5 cans of beers or 5 glasses of alcohol on a single occasion. 69% of drinkers were also aged 20 or below when they first consumed alcohol. Only 30% of respondents understood the correlation between alcohol and cancer. Just a mere 2% knew that drinking can increase the risk of breast cancer. 40% of respondents believe that cancer risks can be reduced by developing one's alcohol capacity since a young age, thinking this would enable the body to adapt to the substance sooner. Rico Liu, chairman of the Cancer Education Subcommittee of the Hong Kong Anti-Cancer Society, says the risk of health complications increases when the body gets used to alcohol, which prompts drinkers to drink more. He noted that alcohol increases the risk of 6 cancer types, including cancer of the stomach, liver, and large intestine. The Department of Health noted the World Health Organization has labeled alcohol as a Group 1 carcinogen. It hopes that harmful drinking habits among adults and the popularity of alcohol among youngsters will reduce by at least 10% by 2025. Kena Chu, TVB News.
One of China's richest men is on a mission to promote education. Charles Chen is doing this through an annual award that offers the winners 30 million Hong Kong dollars each to aid their education research and development. Our Elmi Lung files this special report.
Charles Chan has kept a rather low profile until recent years. He agreed to this interview focusing on education, not Tencent Holdings, the tech giant he co-founded.
In Chinese characters, philanthropist is 公益. That means benefit to public. Everyone can be philanthropist. They can use his kind heart, his kind language to the people.
Chan contributed financially. His 2.3 billion yuan donation landed him the top spot on the Forbes China philanthropy list last year.
On May 24, 2013,
this could be his proudest venture to date, the Yidan Prize he founded 2 years ago. The annual award honors 2 distinguished figures who promote education development or research, with a ceremony held in Hong Kong.
And there's no way that a human being can create.
Anat Agarwal is one of them, selected from a pool of roughly 1,000 nominations which took an independent panel 6 months to go through. The professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology is recognized for free online courses dating back to one experiment in 2012.
It was in circuits and electronics. It was a MIT class, and we thought we would get a few hundred students to take the class online. Before we knew it, we had 155,000 students enrolled. Transform education disruptively, both in scale and in quality. That was the motivation that we had.
Since then, almost 20 million people have taken modules offered and accredited by prestigious institutions like Oxford, Harvard, and Cornell. Closer to home, HKU and Peking University.
When these top universities are offering certifications in these amazing high-quality courses, companies are taking notice. For example, GE is a major conglomerate. They will guarantee interviews to students in Massachusetts who complete certifications on edX.
The Yidan laureate plans to invest all $30 million of prize money to develop hundreds more free online courses.
There are many prizes for many technical fields, but education hasn't been given the same importance. I think this prize, the amount of the fund, will certainly make people take notice.
If Yidan Prize can push the education go forward, let this society more better, I will feel very happy.
Elmi Long, TVB News.
A human rights pioneer who challenged the Soviet and Russian regimes has died at the age of 91. Lyudmila Alexeyeva demanded freedom for political prisoners and that her country establish democratic rights. She co-founded the Moscow Helsinki Group, Russia's oldest human rights organization, back in 1976. The activist even risked her own freedom and was forced into exile in 1977. She returned to Russia in 1993 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. She continued her work into her later years, despite being impeded by President Vladimir Putin's government. And over to Germany, where a giant Christmas cake was paraded through the streets of Dresden. Stollen is the name of the cake, and this spectacle is part of the city's 25th annual Stollen Fest. A festive marching band accompanied the cake as it was marched through the streets. Eating Stollen during Christmas is considered tradition in Germany. It dates back to 1730. And this year's massive Stollen weighed in at just over 3,800 kilograms and was sold for charity. And that is a wrap of our news.
Bye for now.